Welcome to Moonlight Stories. My name is Brandon, your host. Before we step into the quiet halls of Ashwood House series, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below. So pour yourself something warm, be it a cup of tea, coffee, or something with a little extra spirit. Dim the lights, settle in, and let's begin our mystery. Widow of Fredrick Ellery Part 2. I was in the halls of Ashwood House and I heard footsteps. Not mine, not Frederick's, not echoes from the past. New ones, uncertain, slow. The kind of walk you take when entering a place that feels wrong but fascinating. I felt it before I saw it. The shift, the air in the walls stirring with fresh breath. The windows adjust ever so slightly to filter the afternoon sun. Floorboards flexing. Not in pain, but in anticipation. The house was waking up again. Not for me. For them. Visitors. I saw them from inside. Through the mirror, through the walls, through the eyes that no longer blinked. Two of them. Young. Curious. Drawn by the same whispers that brought me. The same archive records. The same mystery. The same promise of answers in a place no one should remember. They stepped through the threshold, and I felt it, the subtle shift of the house measuring them. One was skeptical. He walked with his phone out, scanning walls, documenting. The other felt more familiar. She moved slower, like the house already recognized her. The kind that dreams vividly, the kind that leaves doors slightly open, the kind that might hear voices and listen. They made it to the parlor before anything happened. She paused by the mirror, looked into it, and for a moment, her gaze passed directly over mine. Not startled, not confused, just aware. I whispered then, not with voice, but with memory. You've been here before. She froze. Her friend didn't notice. He moved on, photographing the old fireplace. But she leaned closer to the glass, and I saw her pupils widen. Something inside her remembered. She touched the frame, and when she did, the lights in the hallway flickered, not by coincidence, but as a welcome. The house remembered her, which meant she might remember me. Not this version, not the final one, but one of the others. Maybe she was one of the 10 in the mirror. Maybe she had once burned the blueprint. Maybe she had once opened the wrong door. Or maybe the house had built parts of itself from her. It didn't matter now. She was here, and the house was no longer resting. It was rebuilding, room by room, memory by memory. She called out to her friend, said she felt something strange. He laughed it off, but the door behind him slowly closed. Not slammed, just eased itself shut. The house does that when it wants you to stay. He didn't notice. She did, and I saw the realization form behind her eyes. This wasn't a normal place. This wasn't a house. It was a story, one still being written. By people like me. By people like her. I watched her, the girl by the mirror. She didn't run. That's always the first sign. Runners never make it far. The ones who stay, the ones who pause and listen, they're the ones the house keeps. She placed her palm on the glass, softly, like it might breathe back. And I swear, for a moment, the mirror warmed beneath her touch. The house responded. I felt it ripple through the walls, like muscle memory, like blood returning to a limb long fallen asleep. Her friend, Jason, I think his name was, called to her from the second floor, said he found something strange in the architect's study. Of course he had. The study always gives them something. It never shows the same thing twice. For him, it was probably an envelope, a letter without a date, a diagram labeled in handwriting that's almost his own. He opened it. He shouldn't have, because now is part of it too. Meanwhile, she stayed by the mirror, staring into herself, or rather, into me, and I knew what was coming. The question, the one they all ask in one way or another. And when she finally whispered it, it came as a breath on glass. Is this me? She didn't mean it vainly. She meant, am I already here? She meant, is this version just a return? I wanted to answer her. I tried, but we don't speak the way we used to. Not with words, only through memory, through pattern, through sensation. So I showed her, not a vision, not a hallucination, just a feeling. The way what feels under your fingers when you're carving a name you can't say out loud. The sound of pages flipping in a windless room. The taste of old air and older silence. And the weight, that terrible, beautiful weight, of knowing you've been somewhere before, even if no map agrees. She gasped, stepped back, eyes wide, tears threatening, but not from fear, from recognition. Jason came down the stairs then, holding the envelope. His hand was shaking. He asked her if she'd heard something, if she'd felt the house shift. She didn't answer. She was still staring at the mirror. And then, gently, she spoke my name. Not his name. Not Fredrick. Mine. The name I hadn't heard in years. Not since before the fire. Before the blueprint. Before the ledger. No one else could have known it. And yet she did. And the moment she spoke it, the house confirmed it. Chimes echoed through the halls. Not from bells. From pipes. From beams. From bones. Not music. Memory. Jason backed away. He said the air felt wrong. Said they needed to leave. She didn't argue. But she turned, one last time, to the mirror. To me. And smiled. Not like Clara. Not like Fredrick. A different smile. A knowing one. She understood now. And even if she left, she would carry us with her. Because that's how the house survives. Not in stone. Not in glass. But in those who leave it and never really leave it. She and Jason stepped through the front door. It closed behind them, gentle as breath. And the house exhaled. Not sad. Satisfied. Another version written. Another page added. Another witness walking the world with pieces of us in her chest. One of them. One of us. After they left, the house went quiet again. But not empty. Never empty. There are parts of the house that don't require footsteps to stay awake. Spaces that live between walls and beneath staircases. Rooms without doors. Rooms that aren't really rooms at all. Just impressions of where moments once happened. They hum, softly, a low resonance, like beams settling, but not physical. Emotional. The kind of vibration grief makes when it has nowhere else to go. I walked through one of them. Or maybe it walked through me. It's hard to tell now. You lose direction after enough time in the framework. That's what we call it. Not just the bones of the house, but the echo structure. The invisible lattice of every version, every choice, every alternate draft of what might have been. Each beam remembers something slightly different. Each hallway turns just a fraction more left. Each echo holds the voice of someone who thought they could fix this place. Some tried architecture. Some tried fire. Some tried prayer. But the framework absorbs it all. It doesn't forget. It just files it away. And tonight, the framework stirred. Not because of me. Because of her. She left something behind. Unintentional. Maybe. But the house caught it all the same. A thread. A thought she wasn't done thinking. And now it winds through the framework like a live wire. I follow it. I don't have a choice. It hums softly through the old plumbing, through the unused dumbwaiter shaft, across the ribs of a floor that was never laid properly. And there, deep in the crawl space behind the west wall, I find it. Not a memory. A beginning. Strange. Beginnings don't usually show up here. But this one pulses. It's not her memory. It's not mine. It's new. A blueprint that hasn't been drawn yet. And it vibrates with a kind of energy I haven't felt since the night Clara vanished. The house feels it too. It turns, subtly, shifts, waits. Because if this beginning takes root, if she returns, or if someone else picks up the thread. There will be changes, new rooms, new decisions, new mirrors, and maybe this time, a different outcome. The framework is listening, which means, so am I. Not all blueprints are built. Some are drawn, studied, altered, and then quietly discarded. Folded once, then again, and slid into the back of a drawer and no one opens anymore. But the house remembers, even the ones it never became, especially those. They exist as shadows, laid beneath the real walls like hidden roots, structures that never manifested in brick or beam, but linger in the mind of the place like phantom limbs. That's where I went next, to one of those forgotten drafts. It wasn't a room. Not exactly. More of a concept that hadn't found a form. I reached it by passing behind a cabinet that shouldn't move, then descending a flight of stairs that wasn't there yesterday. And at the bottom, stillness. A space untouched by footsteps. No dust, no age, just waiting. On the far side stood a table. Upon it, a single object. A pencil. Old, worn, bite marks at the top, as if someone once paused mid-thought and never finished it. Beside it, an unfinished sketch. Lines traced carefully, but abruptly stopped. A staircase that ended in mid-E. A hallway that turned inward. A room with no door but 3 windows, all looking into the house. The forgotten draft. The house had started to build this once, but something made it stop. Maybe fate, maybe memory, maybe something inside it recognized a danger even it could not hold. Because this version, this one was different. I looked close at the sketch and saw something I couldn't explain. In the margins, written in the smallest script, hardly visible, was a single sentence. He won't follow us, hey. I didn't know who wrote it, but I knew who they meant. Fredrick, the one who first designed the house. Not the house as it is, the house as it wants to be. He had never reached this place, never drawn this room, never known this draft survived, which meant this was outside his reach, the only part of the house that truly wasn't his. And yet, it was still connected, still part of the framework, still humming. I picked up the pencil, and the house shivered, not in fear, in recognition. It knew what I was about to do. It had been waiting for someone to finish the sketch, to give shape to what had only been a possibility, not to escape, to evolve. I didn't need to draw much, just one line, one simple turn in the hallway, one new door. The moment the pencil touched paper, the walls around me shifted. Not dramatically, just a quiet realignment, as if somewhere else in the house, a new door now existed. And someone, someday, would open it. Someone like her, or like you, because the house isn't done. It never will be, not as long as there are new drafts to finish. There was no sound when the door appeared. No creak, no rattle, no musical sting of revelation. Just a presence. One moment. The hallway ended in the same way it always had. Blank wall, subtle curve, wallpaper peeling in the top corner. The next moment, a door. Not ornate, not ominous, just new. And yet, it didn't feel young. It felt like it had always been meant to be there. Like the blueprint had finally caught up with its own intention. The house didn't react the way it had to other changes. It didn't tense, didn't sigh, didn't whisper. It simply waited. Because the door wasn't for me. It was for her. She returned 3 days later. Alone. Jason never came back. Whether he was frightened, or changed, or simply uninvited, I don't know. But she came back. Not like a trespasser this time. Like a resident. Like someone who had heard her name spoken by the floorboards in a dream and knew where she belonged. The house opened for her. Not physically, emotionally. You can feel it if it happens to you. The shift in gravity. The sense that your thoughts aren't entirely your own anymore. Not because they are stolen. Because they are echoed, mirrored, reflected. She moved through the hall slowly. stopped at the mirror again. But she didn't touch it this time. She didn't need to. She already knew I was watching. She whispered something I couldn't hear, not with ears, at least, but the framework heard it, and a pulse moved through the house like a nod. She walked past the study, ignored the parlor, turned the left corner that had never been there before, and stopped. The door was waiting. Plain oak, brass knob, no markings, and yet, when she touched it, it responded like a living thing. A slight warmth, a hum, and as she turned the handle, the air deepened. Have you ever heard silence change pitch? It's hard to explain, but that's what it did. Like the room was holding its breath with her. The door opened, and she stepped through. I tried to follow. I tried, but the house wouldn't let me, because that room wasn't in my draft. That door didn't exist in my framework. She had finished the sketch, not me, and that meant she was now the architect. I felt it instantly. The house shifted again, not crumbling, not resisting, evolving. A second blueprint led over the old, not erasing, revising. And I realized something that froze me in place, even though I no longer needed to breathe. This was no longer my story. It was hers. And I was becoming just another reflection in the wall. Walls don't forget. Not here. Not in this house. They may stand still, may crack and fade and lean with time. But within them are layers. Memories pressed like fingerprints in plaster. Secrets soaked into the grain of old timber. And if you listen carefully, very carefully, you can hear them speaking. Not in words. In weight. In the way the light falls. In the pause between your steps. In the corners that always seemed just a bit too dark. She moved differently now. Not cautiously. Not fearlessly. Either. She moved like someone who had inherited something. A great burden. Or great key. She passed through hallways that had never existed before she stepped into them. The framework followed her. Adapting. Supporting. Remembering. Because what she had done, what she had become, was not accidental. She had been chosen. Or perhaps, she had always been part of the design. And now, the walls began to recall things I never knew. Memories I had no hand in shaping. A flickering lamp that had never stood in the parlor. A child's laughter in a room we never called a nursery. A journal tucked behind bricks in a hearth that had long been cold. She was unlocking rooms I'd never seen. But I could feel them. I could feel her. And I wasn't alone. Others stared. Old names. Old watches. Old architects. Not all were kind. Not all were human. But they were listening now. Because she wasn't just writing a new chapter. She was rewriting the foundation. Walls that had been solid for a century began to flex, not crumble, bend. Like ribs expanding for breath. She whispered to them sometimes, and they whispered back, not in English, not even in language, but in recognition. The walls knew her, not as a visitor, not even as an owner, but as a continuation. The same way a melody continues after pause. The same way flame leaps from one wick to another. And somewhere, deep in the house, deeper than I had ever gone, I heard my name. Not spoken, remembered. The wall near the basement stage shifted, revealing an old notch I had carved with a knife as a boy. Before all of this, before the house was what it became, before Fredrick, before the fire, she had found that place. She had seen it, and she had remembered me, even as I faded, even as my version of the house became a shadow beneath hers. I should have mourned that. Instead, I felt peace, because someone remembered. And hey, that means you never really vanish. You just become part of the story. One layer in the wall, one hum in the framework, one line in the blueprint, waiting for the next architect. It wasn't on any map, not in Frederick's designs, not in Clara's sketches, not even in mine, but it was there now, at the top of the staircase that didn't used to go that far. Behind the door with no knob. past a hallway lined in paintings that hadn't been painted yet. The room. She found it just before dusk. That delicate hour when light stretches long and memory slips easily between shadows. She didn't hesitate. She opened the door like she expected it. And maybe she did. Inside, it looked ordinary. A desk, a window, a chair. But ordinary things don't breathe. And this room did. It inhaled when she stepped through. Not hungrily, almost relieved, as if it had waited a very long time to be opened. Dust motes danced in angled sunlight. The wood grain in the floor pulsed faintly beneath her shoes, as if remembering the weight of someone else. She circled the room once, fingertips brushing the wall. Not searching, listening. Then she found it. A gap in the floorboards, slight, no more than the width of a whisper. She pried it open with her nails. Beneath it, a box. Not old, not new, timeless. Inside, one object. A piece of paper. Folded. Worn. She opened it. No words. Just a shape. Drawn by hand. In black pencil. A version of the house. But not quite right. Some rooms rearranged. A new chamber beneath the library. A sealed vault beneath the stairwell. A second mirror. And in the center of the page, circled twice. This room. She stayed at it. Not confused. Not frightened. Focused. Then, slowly, she placed the paper down on the desk. Sat in the chair. Closed her eyes. And began to hum. It wasn't a melody I recognized. But the walls did. They responded, shifting imperceptibly. Breathing with her. It wasn't about building anymore. Or uncovering. Or remembering. It was about translating. This room wasn't just newly formed. It had always been here, waiting for the right version of the house to let it through. A version only she could summon. And as the hum deepened, as the air around her thickened like fog, I realized something. She wasn't in the room. She was the room. She had given it form, shape, memory, identity. And through her, the house was learning a new language. One that wasn't written in blueprints or spoken through fire, but sung, softly, through the walls. The first time the house sang, it was barely audible. A tremor in the floorboards. A breath caught between the windows. A vibration that passed through the bones of the framework like wind through an old violin. But she heard it. She always heard it. Not with her ears, but deeper. Somewhere near memory. Somewhere older than thought. She sat in the chair of the room that hadn't existed the day before. Eyes closed, hand resting gently on the desk, humming quietly. Not a tune, but a tone. And the house answered. Low, soft, like the settling of dust or the creak of forgotten staircases. It didn't sing in melody. It sang in structure. Every beam, every joint, every timber held its own note. And together, they made something living. Not music. Not exactly. Consciousness. I felt it before I understood it. The way birds feel a storm days before the clouds arrive. The way a dream warns you of something you've already forgotten. The house was awakening. Not haunted. Not alive. Something between. Aware. And she was the conduit. Not controlling it. Not possessing it. But harmonizing with it. A bridge between memory and possibility. Her song traveled. Down halls that had been sealed since before Clara disappeared. Into attics that once held blueprints too dangerous to build. Through fireplaces that had burned names off ledgers long forgotten. And as the tones moved, the house moved with them. Not visibly, not yet, but in preparation. It was becoming something new. Or perhaps something it was always meant to be. There were consequences, of course. There always are. Voices long dormant stirred in the walls. Not angry, curious. Other architects, other echoes. Some had laid bricks. Some had drawn lines. One or two had buried things in the foundation they never wanted found. They were not thrilled to be remembered. But they had no choice. She had found the key. And the key wasn't an object. It wasn't a mirror or a staircase or a sealed-off vault. It was a frequency, a way of being in the house, of resonating with it. And now that she had found it, she was no longer just walking through its history. She was amplifying it. Every room she entered began to adjust, to attune, to shift subtly toward the note she carried. And in doing so, it gave something back. Clarity, truth, buried names and secret doorways, old debts and forgotten blueprints. I watched from the halls that had once been mine, barely recognized now in the new architecture of her song. And still, I did not mourn. How could I? The house had always been a chorus. It had just taken her to tune it. The sound changed when she went underground. Not silence, not absence, a deeper note, the kind you feel in your ribs more than your ears. The frequencies below. The basement wasn't just a basement anymore. It hadn't been for years, centuries, in house time. It had grown beneath itself, winding inward like a spiral shell. Layer upon layer of decisions, erased walls, and structural afterthoughts. Down here, the house held secrets it didn't want to remember. But she went anyway. No light, no torch, no hesitation. Her humming grew quieter, more concentrated, and the house leaned in to hear it. The first chamber she passed had been sealed in 1913. A failed edition. Too damp, they said. But really, it was too loud. The walls still whispered the names of the 3 workers who vanished during its construction. They never found the bodies, only their tools, arranged neatly in a circle, handles all pointing inward. She stopped there, kneeling, placed her palm to the floor, and in the stillness, I felt it. The tools moved. Not much, just a twitch, an acknowledgement. Then she stood and kept going, deeper, past the crawl space that wasn't part of the original house, past the root cellar that had become a library in some drafts and a crypt in others, down to the lowest level, the place no one had ever charted. Even Fredrick avoided it. He once wrote, "The house resists further excavation. There is something down there that belongs to neither me nor the earth." He was right. She reached it, a hollow carved not by human hands, but by accumulation. Every lie told in the house, every unsent letter, every broken vow and whispered threat. They'd settled here, like sediment. The weight of it was almost unbearable. Almost. But she stood in the center of the void and sang anyway. A new note, not one of memory, of mercy. It changed everything. The walls didn't collapse. They unfolded, like petals, or paper, or breath. And the air that escaped had been held for far too long. It didn't smell of mold or age. It smelled like truth. Truth the house had buried beneath brick and silence and time. And now, it rose like heat from the floor, reaching her, reaching me. For the first time since I became a voice in the framework, I felt weightless. And in that moment, I understood. The frequencies below weren't meant to be silenced. They were meant to be heard, but only by the right listener, only by the one who could carry them back into the walls. The one who knew how to build not just with structure, but with sound. It was always there. That's what unsettled me most. The hidden room, not hidden behind brick or beneath stays, not physically, hidden in perception, folded so tightly into the harmonic structure of the house that no blueprint could name it. No map could predict it. Even I, woven into the frame, watching from behind the walls, had missed it until she sang it into being. The melody she carried down from the lower frequencies began to resonate. Not in echoes, in invitation. Some way above, just off the second landing near the stained glass window of a girl who never lived, a seam opened. A bale there shimmer in the plaster. And then, a door, not conjured, revealed. The hidden room. Her hand didn't touch the knob. It turned on its own, because it recognized her. Inside, nothing. At first. No furniture, no light source, no air movement, just a stillness that felt listening. She stepped in, and the door closed behind her. It didn't lock. Locks implies something is being kept out. This door knew the opposite was true. In the center of the room was a circle, carved faintly into the floor, worn smooth by time or ritual. 12 symbols, not runes, not letters, architectural glyphs, notations pulled from the margins of long-lost drafts. Each one a concept, a room that never existed, a staircase that ended before it began, a hallway that bent back on itself, a fireplace with no chimney, and in the middle, a name. Not hers, not mine, the house's, not the name we gave it, the true name, a resonance too dense for a single word, something that had to be felt. She stepped into the circle and sang again, this time not from memory, but from instinct. The room responded immediately. The symbols glowed faintly, not light, but awareness. Then, the house changed key. Have you ever heard a structure shift pitch? Not creak or groan, shift. Every room seemed to pause, as if listening for something just below its hearing range. The chandelier in the main hallway swayed slightly, though no breeze touched it. The cracked mirror in the upstairs study healed. The moth-eaten drapes in the parlor realigned themselves without touch. All of it, tuning, aligning. She was doing it, reharmonizing the house, correcting the dissonance that had rippled through decades of fractured blueprints and buried intentions. Not erasing history, bringing it into balance. This was what the hidden room was meant for. Not secrets, not power, resolution. A space that held every broken note the house had ever sung and offered them a place to rest. And in that rest, resonance. I could feel the echo of my own story sliding into the pattern, not vanishing, joining. And I knew, finally, this house was no longer haunted. It was whole. If the silence spoke to you, if the shadows whispered something you can't quite explain, then don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to Moonlight Stories. Your thoughts may uncover more than you realize. Because the story isn't over. Part 3 is coming, and what's waiting there might change everything you thought you knew.